Today we have Brett Oubre, a former U.S. Army reservist. He's also worked with Who's Calling Inc. and Autotrader.com, Baton Rouge Oil Company, and Southwest Louisiana Insurance Agency. Throughout his career, he has been repeatedly recognized as a top salesman. Brett Oubre, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good, man. We got a chance to chat just briefly before we started recording here, and it's good to know that you're in good company. I'm a big fan of the people who put us in touch together, and so I know this conversation is going to be a good one, in particular with the business behind it all. So let's start where I think it makes most sense here. As one of the biggest accomplishments listed here, we're talking about overcoming low self-confidence. So let's talk about that, because there are a lot of entrepreneurs who walk around with sort of a what's what I'm looking for, imposter syndrome, right? And no matter how much success they achieve, they feel like they're not the person that made it happen. So is that sort of your case, or does it go deeper than that?
I had a lot of that as well, but I think in my case, of course, the example that I provided you is getting started, right? Because I think there's areas of low self-esteem. I called it self-esteem, but I think there's areas of low self-esteem. I mean, you can have high self-esteem in your appearance and have low self-esteem in your abilities, if that makes sense. You can have high self-esteem in your academia, but have low self-esteem in your execution of a daily opportunity, if that makes sense to you. And so in my case, in this example that I provided is that when I first started in sales, I almost failed because I continued to lose opportunities because I had the training, I had the ability, but the fear and the what I termed low self-esteem in that category was keeping me from executing.
I see. So how did you get over your low self-confidence? You executed?
Well, I'd like to say that, I had an epiphany, and that, I'd read a book, and I had made some kind of, the light bulb went on. But for me personally, and I think others are similar, for me personally, that situation was I got to the point where I felt like I was at my last opportunity. And I also had responsibilities, I had obligations, and I had a vision that I wanted to be a sales professional. And so I got to the point where I was either going to do it or I wasn't. And I mean, I remember as vividly as I do yesterday, I went in that day and made that sales call, and I didn't close that deal, but I brought it very far down the road, and I ended up closing that deal. And that success that I had that day gave me the confidence to say I can versus I can't in my mental mind. Now, I didn't repair it that day. What I did was started the journey to repair it.
Yeah, that's huge. Half the battle is really getting started. And even then, knowing that that's not the end, it's only the beginning. It's super great to see that you were able to push yourself to that limit, because I myself have a hesitation when it comes to sales, even though people have said, hey, you'd be pretty good at it. So I have to ask, you underwent all the training, and how did you feel after every training? Did you feel prepared, or was it really that fear that kept coming back?
I mean, in my case, when you leave, and I know others, whether it's sales or whether it's personal motivation, we all make resolutions on New Year's that we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And I think it's in any of those things. I think that when you're in that moment, if you're in that sales training seminar, if you're in that motivational seminar, if you're at a religious organization and you hear an inspirational message, you walk out of there with the confidence that I'm going to do it. But then when you get into the reality of the execution. It's okay. I don't have that it sounded great when I was sitting there of what I was going to do, but now it's me and the ability to be successful. And that's when you got to draw to me on that self-confidence, and you got to have that voice of I can rather than I can't.
Yeah. And so why don't we dive into how that transitions eventually into you being able to develop real estate? At what point did you go from being a sales professional to transitioning or adding to your arsenal development of real estate?
I mean, we're talking, that when I first started in professional sales, we're talking we're talking the late 80s, early 90s. So I didn't do the first real estate deal until 2005. So I want you to understand that I didn't just all of a sudden go out of the sales ranks into developing of real estate. At this point, I had owned my own business. I had been successful in the corporate world, and I had a vision that I wanted to develop real estate. So I bought a piece of property while I was still operating the other business. And there was a friend of mine that I kept calling, and and here's another demonstration of the self-confidence in that particular industry. I can say at this point I had a high self-confidence, but a low self-confidence in development of real estate. There was a lot of fear, or you can call it fear if it's a better term. And so I kept calling him, and I'm like, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And how about this plan? And how about that plan? And I did that for probably 3 weeks. And this guy's a very successful person, very high energy. He probably wouldn't have taken my call if we weren't from the same hometown. And after about 3 weeks, he said, "Don't call me back until you take action." And he hung up on the phone on me.
How did
And
you respond to that?
I went home that night. I think a lot of us handle it the same way. When you initially get any type of negative reaction, again, in theory, we'd like to say, I've got this great, formula for success, and I did this and I did, but the reality is that I hung up the phone. I felt defeated for that day. And I went home and thought, okay, this was a dream that I shouldn't have. And this is something I can't do. And I went to sleep that night, and I woke up the next morning. I said, and I started, because I learned how to generate those positive self-talk in my head. And I said, okay, you're still the same person, because you gotta, let's look at what he said. That's actually a positive reaction. And because what he's saying is because he told me several things that were in that 3-week conversation that were good advice. But basically what I was doing was what a lot of people do, is I wasn't accepting his advice, because I wanted to get ready to get ready. I wanted to listen to him talk and give me assurance. So I felt like I did something, although I didn't do anything. And that day I made the offer on the property. 30 days later, we closed. And I'd like to say I had this great plan and I had everything planned out, but I didn't. and I kind of try to figured it out as we went,
So how does one step into the real estate game? It's about, again, making sure you overcome your self-limiting beliefs and having the capital to actually get into it.
Yeah. And if anybody says luck and time is not part of the process, I don't think they're being honest. I mean, that particular time was 2005. Capital was very liquid. It was very easy if you had some type of income source to get a loan. You could go into a bank. This was before they changed all the laws in 2008. And you could go into a bank on an idea, and they would loan you based on the idea. After 2008, they won't do that anymore. And you have to have the right liquidity. We didn't have the right liquidity. Okay. And it was a wing and a prayer and a hope and if I tried that same thing in the same set of circumstances today, I'm I feel like I still would have did it, but it was be done a totally different way. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so then the next part of the journey steps into getting a franchise. So we're seeing here a journey of a career in professional sales and this idea of the fear, or as we call it, low self-confidence, right? And just getting ready to get ready. And it happened again with real estate development. Did you face that fear again when it came to stepping into the world of owning a franchise? And were you able to overcome it again in the same manner through generating that? Like, how did you step into the world of franchise now?
Well, if I back up, I actually left in between the real estate. I was actually in the automobile business, but I left my corporate job to go into the automobile business. And I went into business with some people that had 7 stores. And I mean, I left my corporate job to go be a sales manager on the desk at a car dealership. And I had a very nice sales. So I was a sales director. I had a very nice job. I was leading a lot of people. I was working nationally. Had a good quote unquote salary package, benefits, all the things that most people would want. But I still had that burning desire to be an entrepreneur. And so I met these people that had dealerships, and I wanted to do that. And I actually took a tremendous pay cut to do that, but I had to learn it. I mean, I think one of the things that, we all think that, man, I've been doing this for 20 years. You should pay me XYZ, 1, 2, 3. When you switch industries, they look at you as you don't have any credibility. In fact, immediately you got to sell yourself even as a credible person, because the first thing, anytime something goes wrong, the first thing they're going to go is, well, that's that guy from corporate America. He don't know how to do this. And so I started with those folks. I enrolled in NADA Dealer Academy. I started learning the financial side of the car business, and I was working on the desk. And then they had an opportunity at a pre-owned used car lot. I got that opportunity. I took it, and I invested with them and became an equity partner. And I had did that for a number of years. And I just, it wasn't them as people. They were fine people. But when you're in business with 7 people and you have a vision that's the opposite of theirs, it's hard to execute it. Not from effectiveness standpoint, we were very effective, but it was kind of a tug of war. It's kind of, you ever work for a company and you didn't see eye to eye with your immediate boss, so to speak, but you were still successful, but every day was a grind because it was 2 different visions, apart. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying, actually.
So that was kind of what was going on. And that's where the interest in the real estate investment thing had been born when I was 18 years old, and I had a medial task job, and I was doing file clerk work, and their son was a commercial developer, and they owned an insurance company. That was before I got the corporate job there. And he did commercial real estate, and I'd go in there and change his garbage can, and I would ask him about commercial real estate. And in fact, later on, I got to talk to him about it, because he actually sent me some tenants for one of the shopping centers years and years and years later. But so that was where I said, well, it's time to do that, because I was leaving the car business and I was going to do this commercial real estate thing full time. And then the financial crisis of '08 hit, and my stuff was cash flowing. So as far as having cash to live on and those things, I was okay. But to say I was fulfilled, I wasn't. And 2010, no, I'm sorry, 2012, excuse me. I was sitting in the chair with my son. We were watching Star Wars. He wanted to he wanted to watch that Star Wars because I was leaving to go watch a football game in Baton Rouge. And his mother said, "Hey, would you get this table and help me move it upstairs?" And as I was moving it upstairs, I had a seizure. And I'd never had one before. They rushed me to the hospital. I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. I had it, 2 weeks later, I had it removed. I lost the use of my left arm. It works now. I rehabbed all that back, and that was October the 12th of 2012. I'm sorry, October the 12th of 2012. Had the surgery on the 25th, and I bought that first venture in February of 2013. In fact, my arm was still in a sling, and basically, I would get up every day. I would go to therapy. I'd go to my office, and then after surgery, have you ever had major surgery?
No, not haven't.
For a period of time, it just wears you out for a while. And so I would come back and I'd kind of sleep in my chair, and I'd wake up and I had a legal pad, and I just started journaling. What do you want to be when you grow up? And I kept coming back to, I want to lead, train, motivate, mentor executives in the auto industry. And I called a friend of mine, and there was an opportunity, and I bought it. And that's how it began.
This is amazing. The question really now becomes, how responsible do you think the seminars and training early on in your career were for the way you were able to redesign the way you saw circumstances in your life? Do you think they had a big impact on you, or is this something that you just always were as a person, where, yeah, you give in and be upset like anyone else, and then you'd catch yourself? It wasn't training, it was more just who you are as a person. How responsible do you think training was for that?
Well, I can tell you that what you put in is what comes out, as long as it's evaluated. There's a lot of people that go to a lot of motivational seminars, training, leadership work, personal development, and they check the box and they move on. And for some period of time, I was that person. And that doesn't make me good or bad. That doesn't make me better than everybody else. But the applied lessons, it's just a building block, if that makes sense. So those lessons were very important, but you have to reflect on those ideas. You don't beat yourself up, because that becomes a low self-esteem event. And you utilize those lessons to catapult you to the next level. But to be me as a person, my dad was he was a very positive, bright person. I don't think he ever achieved the success he had hoped to achieve. By the world standards, he would have been average. In my standards, he was amazing. But the one thing that he said is, don't ever give up, and know that the sun comes up tomorrow and there's always another way. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. It's truly been a pleasure getting to learn about the how of what it is you've been able to accomplish, and how you transitioned between so many industries, and how you overcame such insane odds and challenges. That part of your journey where you had almost anyone else would have given up the minute they found out that their brain had suddenly turned against them, and their body wasn't working the way it was anymore, and you felt tired all the time. Anyone else would have been like, well, this is what happens, so what? But somehow you were able to dig deeper, like you always have through every transition, to humble yourself before the challenge ahead and push forward, constantly pushing the boundary on what it means to have a low level of self-confidence, or a fear that wants to push you down and keep you where you are, and you never let it keep you there. And for me, that's an incredible lesson in business and in life. And I thank you for sharing that perspective that you've brought today, Brett.
Well, I appreciate that. And personally, I think everybody's got that ability. They just have to be able to tap it. And our desire and our goal with me personally and our team is to try to inspire as many people as we can that are in the middle of the pack to help them go to the next level.
Amazing. Now, where would you want people to connect with you if they want to learn more about what you're doing and who you are?
We have a website. It's www.brett, B-R-E-T-T, last name Oubre, OUBRE.com. It should be, we just redid it and revamped it. We're going to approve it over the weekend. It should be live again next week. I've got a Facebook fan page under Brett Oubre. We've got, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. There's a public page on Instagram, and I push out daily. At this point, I started doing it twice a week content for people to be able to, and it's all free. I mean, I have a primary day job. I'm doing this really to try to help the common person tap into their greatness and move their life forward.